I'm Ross Lamphere, and very good friend of mine from years ago, Nancy Thompson, who most of her, that's how I remember her, Nancy Thompson, Harlan. Good to visit with her and see her, and I came to learn that she and Ketelsen had presented a most interesting topic, at least to me, polo, past and present. I was fortunate enough to have grown up in the years. My dad played a little polo both at the Alkali and up at Jim Roth's indoor arena. Hardly an arena, it was a fenced-in area. The fence was probably 4 feet high, it was solid wood. It kept the ball in play and was a little slower. Wasn't quite as wicked as outdoor polo, a smaller arena. But I got the opportunity to play in both places and with a lot of the same people that Nancy and Kurt are going to mention here today. So with that, I want to introduce Nancy Thompson Harlan and Kurt Ketelsen, who are going to present to us today polo, past and present. Nancy.
Well, I am really tickled to see so many people here today. I think that that's just great. And can you hear me? Okay. I talk loud anyway, but this might help. It is, I think a better title might be The History of Polo in Meade County. I've tried to change it a little bit to make it a little bit more pertinent to people that you would know. And it's surprising how many you'll find that you do know these names. I wanted to acquaint you a little bit more with the presenters today. And this is Judy Ketelsen and her husband, Kurt Ketelsen. And they both played polo. Kurt is the authority today, I am not. And so when I finish talking, he's going to tell you about how the game is played, how long it is, what constitutes a chukker, what's the role of the different players. And then he'll talk to you about all this wonderful equipment that you see around you, and then he'll answer questions that you might have. We also know that there are some folks in the audience that played, and we would love to have them tell about their experiences as well. Now, this right here is me on the far right. And it was taken probably in the 50s, 1950s. And my only claim to fame is that my dad, Leroy Thompson, my uncle, Clayton Thompson, and my brother, Ed Thompson, all played polo. And the other thing is, I've been able to compile some information that I think is really interesting, and I hope you think so as well. My colleagues, this picture, incidentally, was taken at the Pier polo field, probably when the Alkali polo team played Pier. My colleagues over here are Mary Tyler, and her dad was Bud, and he played on the Pier team. And the girl in the middle is Janie Tyler, and her dad was Toby, and he played on the Pier team. Now, this is the Fort Meade polo team getting ready for a game. And it's because of, as I understand it, because of the cavalry that polo really came to western South Dakota. As you all know, that cavalry was stationed at Fort Meade from 1907 until 1911, and then again, and this is the critical time frame, 1924 until 1942. And during that time, a lot of polo was played at Fort Meade because the Army encouraged polo playing so that the riding skills of the cavalry would be improved. It takes little equipment to play polo. You need a helmet with a strap, you need a mallet, you need a ball, you need some riding boots, and then of course an English saddle and a good horse. These are pictures of a tournament that was held at Fort Robinson, Nebraska in 1931. And what I want you to note is this Sturgis team over here on the right. Now, I found an article written in the Northwest Meade County History book, and it was published in 1969. And that article was by Bill Deere, and he wrote it for SoH Sports in 1954. And his article was called The Sturgis Polo Team. But then he said, you know, they really should be called, and are now called, the Alkali Team, because most of the people that play on that team live on Alkali. He noted that he had interviewed Ketelsen, that would be Kurt Ketelsen's granddad, for the content of this particular article. And he said that they organized a team in 1926. Now that was 2 years after the cavalry came back to Fort Meade. And the members of that team were Dave Sparks, Horace Farnsworth, Ed and Jesse Garlick, and Ket himself. Now as I go along today, I'm just going to name all these team members because I think that's what will make it interesting for those of you that are here. Then he said there was a second team, and that second team consisted, in addition to the first players, of Pete Rosander, Charles Nichols, George Blakeman, Henry Sauter, and A.B. Ryan. I just saw Ray Aga come in. Ray, why don't you come up here and sit beside Kurt in the front so that you, or wherever you want to sit, but I'm really glad you could make it. Ray is probably the oldest original polo team person to be here today. So we're really glad you could make it, Ray. There's 2 seats up in front, so that would be just great. Now I want you to note that on that team.
I'm sorry I'm so late.
Not a problem, we're glad you're here. I think this is your son, Lynn, is that right? We're really glad you're here, Ray. On this polo team that you see pictured here, you'll see the names of Rosander and Sauter. And they were the ones, thank you, that'll help. They were the ones that, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. They were the ones that were reported to be on that second team. Well, then he said there was a third team made up of Neil Woodall, Oliver Hansen, and you'll see him listed here. This is evidently Oliver Hansen. Those of us who are from Alkali remember Oliver Hansen. And then there was Sidney and Chauncey Martin over here on the left. It's interesting to note that the Pier had a team at that Fort Robinson tournament. So they were playing polo way back at the start when Sturgis was, and maybe even before. I don't know when they started. Note that there was a Hot Springs team. Now history says that a team was started in 1925 in Hot Springs. And that's because there was a man by the name of Butler who owned a paper company in Chicago. He bought some property in Hot Springs and started a polo breeding farm. And then along with that, he opened up a field and started a polo club. So this is the Hot Springs team. And reportedly at this Fort Robinson tournament in 1931, Butler provided the trophy for that particular tournament. So the Hot Springs had an active scene at that time. It's interesting to note that a sports writer for the Hot Springs Star said that South Dakota was an ideal place for polo in that the prairie was buffalo tough and required little maintenance, and that most people knew one end of a horse from the other. Now, Leroy Thompson in again, that Northwest Meade County history book, published in 1969, wrote an article about polo on alkali and how it got started. And I'm going to be quoting a lot from that particular article. Leroy Thompson reported that Ketelsen started the polo team on alkali in 1937. And this is Ket on your left. He is at the alkali polo field, and it was one of his pastures there on his ranch. And Leroy said that Ket liked any sport, but he preferred one with horses. So it was only natural that he started raising polo ponies on his ranch on alkali. Leroy noted that Ket's son, Raymond, that would be Kurt's dad, and his stepsons, Joe and John Ager, Alice Ager is here, that would have been your dad, broke those horses. Leroy said that when Ket asked him to play, he responded by saying, "Well, sure, but I don't have enough horses." And Ket's reply was, "Oh, that's all right. I've got lots of horses." And Leroy reports that, in fact, he certainly did. He said that the team needed to buy some equipment, so they bought mallets for $1.50 each and a few dozen balls. He said the order came to about $25, but in the 30s, that was really a lot of money. Then on a Sunday in May, in 1937, the future players gathered in Ket's pasture for their first play. Those first players, including himself, were Ket, Ray Ketelsen, Joe and John Ager, Albert Keffler, Oliver Hansen, and Clayton Thompson. This is a picture that the Ketelsens gave us that shows the Ketelsens headed for polo on any given Sunday. And it's interesting to note that the stepchildren of Ket, namely Tom and Catherine Ager, were sometimes pressed into service when the ranchers had other commitments on game day. The alkali team played Thursday afternoons and Sunday mornings, and Leroy described the play as follows. "I'll bet on a still day the dust rose a mile into the air. The hollering and the yelling could have been heard farther than that, and boy did we have fun. By shortening the mallets, making new heads, and by soaking the battered balls, because they were made of bamboo and willow, so they regained their shape, the men played until it got too cold. Leroy explained that prices got better. They got 7 to 7.5 cents a pound for their steers, and wheat was $1 a bushel. So a little money was available that spring to buy 3 or 4 sticks a player and 1/2 gross of balls. He noted that new boots and helmets started showing up, and we really played a lot of polo for the next few years. This is a photo of Ray Ketelsen. Between 1939 and 1943, Ray Ketelsen went to Garden Grove, California, where he trained polo, jumping, dressage, and parade horses. Upon his return to alkali, Ray, along with several other polo players, enlisted to serve in World War II. And during that time, the alkali team suspended polo on alkali. According to Leroy, as soon as the boys returned from service, we started playing again.
I believe that's
and had quite a bit of polo for about 10 years. Pictured left to right are Marvin Aga, Mark Keffler, and incidentally, Michael, Mark's son, is here today. Lawrence Aga, Albert Jarvis, Glenn Hardy, Leroy and Clayton Thompson, Albert Keffler, that would be Michael's granddad, Raymond Ketelsen, right here, Raymond Ketelsen, and Bud Aga, who is here today. It was during this time frame that I was earning 5 to 10 cents cooling horses. And it was also during this time frame that the wives prepared countless picnic suppers that were consumed at the polo field after the game was played, under some shade if you could find it. Now, there were visiting teams that came to Alkali, and when they did, those families and the team members stayed in the homes of the Alkali team. And it was also during this time, you know, socializing was a natural part of what you did with polo. And this is a group of players. Over here are the Alkali team, is the Pier team. And left to right, we see Albert Keffler, Albert Keffler, Edward Thompson, Leroy Thompson, Glenn Hardy, Ray Ketelsen, that was the Alkali team, and then the Pier team is here. Standing in front are Clayton Thompson and Bill Cross. My guess is that this picture was taken in the 1970s. Leroy Thompson stated that besides the players who started that first summer of 1937, those who stayed and played the most were Lawrence Aga, Ray's dad, Albert Jarvis, Glenn Hardy, Jim Roth, Barney Hogue, and Doc McFarland. He also named the sons of the original players who grew up and started to play: Bud and Marvin Aga, Mark Keffler, Edward Thompson, Bill Hardy, and Keith, David, and Bruce Keffler. And Keith is here today. Leroy summarized his comments about polo by saying, "Whenever I think of polo, I think of Ket. He was a true sportsman." Well, during those times of active polo on Alkali, not only did the Pier team come to Alkali, but that Alkali team also went to Sheridan, perhaps as part of a Pier tournament, and Pier might have gone as well. But I clearly remember when those Sheridan teams were sponsored by Malcolm and John Wallop and their families. And I clearly remember as a kid going to after-game parties at these gorgeous mansion-like homes. And it's quite vivid in my memory that the daughter had a canopy bed in her bedroom, and I was notably impressed. The Pier team, however, played throughout the United States, and Ray Ketelsen often joined them. They would ask him to join them. And but in this picture, we see Clayton Thompson, who played with that Pier team in 1966, and evidently they won a trophy. So over here is Clayton, and then this is Fritz Forney, Bud Tyler, and then this is Lyle Tyler, Bud's son. That year, Clayton also played in Minneapolis and Tulsa, Oklahoma, with the Pier team. It's interesting to note that Ket Ketelsen's daughter, Mary Shear, remembers attending a polo game in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and watching one of the players riding a horse that had been trained and been raised and trained by Ket, her dad. You know, I don't think we can know the quality or appreciate the quality of polo that was played on Alkali unless you bring in the name of Bud Tyler. Bud was a member of the Pier team, and in 1991 he was inducted into the South Dakota Hall of Fame for his outstanding accomplishments in the sport of polo. And although he began as on the Cowboys team in Pier, he also played, he was a member of the U.S. polo team Hawaii in 1952, the U.S. polo team Canada in 1963, the U.S. polo team Kenya Africa in 1973, and the U.S. polo team Jamaica in 1976. In 2015, he was inducted into the South Dakota Sports Hall of Fame, and an article about him notes that he played from the time he was 12 until he was 84. It's interesting to note that he competed in Des Moines, Iowa, against an Army officer who became one of the country's most famous generals, namely George S. Patton. In his prime, Bud had a 4-goal handicap and played professionally in California and in Minneapolis. He reportedly was one of the few polo players who could hit the ball from the middle of the field and score. Bud, is that pretty hard? Probably so. Bud was described as a sportsman and a gentleman. But polo was also played north of Sturgis on the Roth Ranch. And in 1950, an indoor arena was created there, and play ensued. And I think, Ross, you played in that arena. In 1957, they had a tournament there, and reportedly a crowd of 600 people attended. And the newspaper said, the Sturgis Rangers defeated the Pier Cowboys in the first polo game in South Dakota in an official arena built in a natural amphitheater. And truly it was. I remember sitting on that hillside, and it was a beautiful place. I mean, it was gorgeous scenery, and you could really see the game because you were kind of up high. The article explained that this arena conformed to the specifications for indoor play, and that meant 3 instead of 4 players on a team. Now, there was an article written in the newspaper and about this tournament, and it stated that both the Sturgis and A and B teams beat peer opponents in 2 games of 4 chukkers each. The Sturgis A team players were Captain Raymond Ketelsen, Jim Roth, and Clayton Thompson. Their opponents were peers Toby Tyler, Fritz Forney, and Captain Bud Tyler. The B team of Sturgis consisted of Albert Jarvis, Raymond Auga, and Albert Keffler. While the B team for Pier was made up of Mike Platt, Lyle Tyler, and Ronnie Tyler. Both Ronnie and Lyle were Bud's sons. And Brooks, the author of this article, describes the play as follows. Aggressive maneuver by Rangers captain Ray Ketelsen, backed by quick recovery in close situations by Jim Roth, accounted for Sturgis's fine showing, as Clayton Thompson provided good support and maneuverability. Regarding the B team, Brooks stated, Pierce B team could not overcome the unusual maneuverability demonstrated by the Sturgis team. The Sturgis Livestock Exchange provided the trophy for that particular tournament. And 20 members of the Sturgis Polo Club at that time were noted to be Doc McFarland, Ray Ketelsen, Keith Keffler, and Keith is here today, Albert Jarvis, Clayton Thompson, Jim Roth, Albert Keffler, Leroy Thompson, Raymond Lawrence, and Marvin Auga, Fred McFarland, Barney Hogue, Edward Thompson, David and Mark Keffler, Cecil Morale, and Jack Smink. There seems to be no exact record of how long polo was played in that indoor arena. It appears that in the 1960s, the sons of that first Alkali team started to play again at the Hardy Ranch on Alkali. And those men were Bill Hardy, Ray Ketelsen, Royce Ketelsen, Kurt's older brother, and Ed Thompson, as well as a smattering of young men from Sturgis. And I think, Ross, you were part of that group. During this time, Bill Hardy and Ed Thompson off and on played with the Pier team. And Bill Hardy went on to play more professionally and trained horses in Sheridan after that time. It was later that that polo moved out of Meade County, but I think it's important to talk about that period of time as well, because it's because of the descendants of that original Alkali polo team that helped to nurture polo and keep it going for about 90 years. And that's a pretty long time. It was in 1986. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the arena and the play that occurred up in that arena. And this was that tournament. And in front here, we see Mark Keffler. It's a little hard for me to tell who else, but I'm pretty sure that one is Mark. Sorry about that. So it was in 1986 that an organizational meeting to start a polo club occurred at Hart Ranch. And among the 25 in attendance at that organizational meeting were Ed Thompson, Kurt Ketelsen, and Judy Steinbach. And Judy Steinbach became Kurt Ketelsen's wife, and she's here today. Also in attendance at that meeting was Dr. Richard Kavorik, which I'm sure many of you know. Thus, the Black Hills Polo Club was formed. And it was an indoor arena, so they had play all year round, even in the wintertime. And because some of these members were really beginning players, there was instruction that went on during that winter. And then in the spring, they did have an outdoor field and some outdoor games were played. The Bighorn team from Sheridan came down to play, and also the Pier team came to play. It's interesting to note that members of that Pier team were Billy Robbins and Leroy Vollmer. And you know, those were two men that came to play on Alkali. And I clearly remember that Billy Robbins' girlfriend was with me in my house on Alkali. So that's how we would entertain these people when they came. Ultimately, it was decided that a more substantial field was needed and that more visiting teams could be encouraged to come and play if they had a more substantial field. And so consequently, some members of that Black Hills Polo Club encouraged the city of Rapid City to give them an abandoned piece of ground that had been declared floodplain east of the fairgrounds. It had originally been a trailer park and was flooded in the 1972 flood. This was a newspaper clipping of that particular flooding situation. Through the efforts of members of that Black Hills Polo Club, Kurt and Ed took tractors over there. All of the members worked to level the field, plant grass, pick up trash. They finally, and also the Pier Polo Club came to help with that manual labor. And ultimately, games started to be played. And I remember how proud Ed was of that field and how much he enjoyed going there to play polo. Tournaments were held there, and reportedly one of them occurred in June 14th, 1991, and players from Pierre, Sioux Falls, and Rapid City competed. There were other tournaments held. This is a particularly noteworthy one that was held in 1997, and it was complete with a tent for observers where they could enjoy food and drinks, and also a program that listed players having come from Pierre, Des Moines, Sioux Falls, Kansas City, Minneapolis, Winnipeg, Canada, along with the players from the Black Hills Polo Club. There was also a professional player from the Dominican Republic that participated in that particular tournament. Tournament play was vigorous, and the Rapid City Journal reported in their sports section on many of the tournaments. However, the team struggled to keep going, and a decision was made in 2000 to terminate that club. Fortunately, a polo field had been developed at Newton Fork Ranch in Hill City by Paul Littman, and he sponsored an annual Labor Day demonstration polo game for the visitors at his ranch and in Hill City to enjoy in that beautiful hills setting. And fortunately, the Hill City newspaper covered those events well. So we have some nice pictures. This is a picture of play in 2000, and I'm pretty sure that the player on the right is my brother Ed. This is play that occurred in 2002. This is a picture of the teams lined up after the game in 2004. And left to right, we've got Kurt Ketelsen, Richard Kavorak, Ed Thompson, we're not sure who this is, Tim Gregson, Susie Ellison, Bo Gregson, and Judy Ketelsen. And this one was taken in 2005 after that particular demonstration game. I particularly like this one. It was taken in 2009, and evidently Kurt was the captain on the team that won because he's holding the trophy in that particular picture. I like this because it hung in the Alpine Inn for years, and I love to go up there. Ed would always say, Nancy, do you know that Kurt's picture is on the wall at the Alpine Inn? So every time we went up there, we would stop and take a look at Kurt's picture. The last game at Newton Fork was held in 2015, but this is what the newspaper reported about this picture. Kurt Ketelsen, center, set up for a near side backhand shot, one of the most difficult maneuvers because the rider is off balance. Socializing in Hill City was just as much a part of polo as it had been on Alkali. And quite honestly, I think you could ask any one of the fellows and girls that were pictured in these photographs what they thought about polo And I think you would see a smile on their face, a twinkle in their eye, and you would hear, playing polo was some of the most fun I ever had. Okay, now it's Kurt's turn to talk about the nitty-gritty of polo and some of this equipment and how it's played. So I'm gonna take, you want me
Everybody hear me? Okay. Well, I'm Kurt Ketelsen, and this is my wife Judy, sitting right here. This is my son Raymond. And like Nancy was saying, I met my wife at playing polo down in Rapid City there. Okay, great, thank you. And we got married in 1991. And I suppose I should explain the chukkers. Chukkers like a period in any sport. There's 6 chukkers to a game of polo. Each one is 7.5 minutes long. There's a 3-minute break between each chukker, so you can switch horses and tack and whatever. And there's at the end of 3 chukkers, there's halftime. And then we take a 10-minute break and we stomp in all the divots and that the horses have made on the field. So everybody goes out and stomps in the divots so the ball can roll smooth again. And let's see. I guess that's about all for chukkers.
How about the role of the players? Kurt, you know, number 1 and 2. And...
Well, the number one is plays up front, close to the goal, and the number 4 plays way back, and he's like he keeps the other team from scoring. So he's running interference, and he's keeps trying to knock the ball up to the number 1 and number 2 players, and they're the scorers. And the number 3 player is more of the he's the usually the guy that calls the plays and stuff. So he's what do you call that?
Quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback.
Yeah. And he's the most valuable player actually, and he's usually the one that can hit the ball the farthest, get the ball up close to the goal, and the other 2 can get going. But and the number 2 and 3, they play, in the midfield, and it's a team effort. Everybody's passing each other, and usually the number 1 matches up with the number 4 on the other team, and they try to ride each other off. And by riding off, they actually try to push each other off the ball so they can get the advantage. And you have to bump. If you bump a horse, you have to bump a certain way. If you bump too late, it's a foul. You can put the other horse down. So you try to match and bump straight. And then when you get the advantage, if you bump, see if I can knock it down. If you're bumping off this way, then you take a near side shot. It's either a near side front shot or a near side back shot. And if you're bumping the other way and you get the advantage, you get this is the offside over here, 4 shot and a back shot. And then you go to the next shots. If you need to go with the next shot, it's offside next shot and offside near shot. And then a tail shot is way back over here. Near side, and this is the off side. And then Pierce's favorite one was the belly shot. And that's a real tricky one, but they could actually shoot it between the legs of the horse. And if you're riding off, they have to go through your horse too. And I've had it done once to me. Leroy Ballmer did that to me, and that ball bounced and bounced and bounced, went right in the goal. Nothing I could do. This is the indoor ball here. It's inflatable. The indoor is played with one less player. It's a little shorter field. The indoor field is, what's it, 100
by business.
100,
It's 150, wasn't
150 feet long and 50 feet wide. Or is it yards?
Yards.
100 yards long and 150 yards wide. The outdoor field, which I'm more familiar with, is 300 yards long and 100 yards wide. And we used, when my dad was playing, they used a wooden ball made out of willow root, I think, most of it was, or bamboo root. And then when we got to playing, trouble with the wooden ball is, if you hit it hard enough, well, you can see the dents here. But if you hit it too long, it'll split in half. Well, in the rules it says play the larger half, so then you gotta decide which half is the largest. But when my wife and I started playing, we used plastic balls. Then we didn't have that trouble. These wooden balls, if they get beat up enough, then you gotta soak them in a pail of water and they'll expand again and you can use them again. This is my wife's helmet. She had a face guard because there's quite a few polo players have a big scar on their face from somebody else taking a wild swing and hitting you. So I didn't bring my helmet, I guess.
Could find it.
These are knee pads that's used to, and your knees do take a beating when you got a 1,500-pound horse and you're riding 30 miles an hour and you ram into somebody else's horse. They do take a beating. I've come off a game and I couldn't even stand up, hardly stand up, as my knees were giving out so much. And this is a bridle. I still use this bridle today, but we ride with 4 reins. We have a direct rein here for if your horse doesn't want to turn enough, you can grab it and turn around. And then the curve is here for stopping and turning. Maybe you guys want to pass those around or something?
I've done it many times.
Yeah. Here's a ball too.
Yeah.
And we'll pass the wooden ball around and the plastic ball too. Yeah, this saddle here, I bought when I started playing polo.
Get that wolf sound again.
I've got it about, I think 3 other people owned it before I did. And Nancy was talking about Jim Roth. Well, this is his saddle that he had. So, and that's about the best saddle I've ever had. And it's an old, what it was made, here's the name of the guy right here. It's an old Phillips military saddle. And it was made in 1948. And the name of the guy it was made for was right here, but I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read it. What's nice about these saddles is, if you do get hung up, they've got a breakaway.
It was just safety feature.
Yeah, the stirrup comes right off, so you don't get drugged
Not
by your
always.
horse.
Not always.
Why is the indoor ball bigger than the outdoor balls?
Well, it's inflatable so that it doesn't go as far when you hit it, and it's a lot safer. It's closer range, a smaller field, so it's and that little ball, one of these little balls here, you can hit it on 150 yards if you take a big swing on it. Whereas the outdoor ball, I only go about 30, 40.
So if you have a goalie at the end that you're hitting toward, I mean, how big?
No, the goalie is actually the number 4 player. He plays kind of in that area. And if you have a goalie, they call it goaltending, and that's a foul actually. So you have to ride the number 4, he backs the ball a lot to keep it from going in the goal. But they can't sit in the goal.
What's the goal, what's the dimension, or what is the goal you're hitting towards?
Oh,
I can't remember.
what is it? It's about, how was it? 20 feet or so? Yeah, it's about from here to the wall is what it was. I don't remember the exact dimensions. That's the outdoor goal. I don't know what the indoor goal was. Was it about the same?
It seemed like they were about, they might have been a little smaller.
Might have been smaller.
A little bit.
Once one team makes a goal, then is the ball the other team's, like,
No.
No.
You run back to the middle,
oh, you're running?
and then they go into the end.
Yeah, and after each goal, you switch sides.
But then there'd be 8 people, 8 horses, always on there, on the field, on
Correct.
outdoor.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
How fast is the play?
Oh, it can be pretty fast sometimes. It can be 25 mile an hour to 30 miles an hour, somewhere in there. It's, you have to learn to carry the ball at speed. And it's kind of a trick. It takes a while to learn that after a while.
We got a question back here.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. How many horses do you usually bring, and do they make one chucker and they're tired, or do
Oh,
they do 1 and 4 or 1 and 3?
well, you can play one horse for 2 chuckers. So what we usually did was played one horse for the first 3 chuckers. We'd play one horse for each chucker, and then the one we played first would start after the halftime again.
Rest them up a little.
And a lot of us only had 2 horses, so what we would do, we'd get other people playing with us. And so there'd only be four people out on the field at a time, but we might play 1 chucker and sit out and let the other fella play too.
What was an average score of a game or whatever? I mean, how do you score? Where it's just one
Average
per-
score? Yeah.
Yeah.
1 point for each goal, and then, it'd be probably 5 or 6 goals would be a high scoring game.
Right.
You like soccer?
Like hockey.
Hockey, soccer. Soccer.
Is there anywhere now you can see polo? Is anybody play at all around?
I think there's a youth group up in Spearfish that plays. And the last time we played at Hill City,
Sheridan.
they came down.
Sheridan still
Oh,
does.
Sheridan has very high professional game there.
Yeah, they have weekends where they have multiple tournaments and.
They
it's
have
free.
10 fields side by side. It's all irrigated,
In Sheridan.
so it's really nice.
They have announcers, so
Oh,
that you
yeah.
know when,
Yeah.
you hear when somebody scores.
How about
It's a
like
big deal.
Denver, LA, or?
And I think there's a team in Sioux Falls still.
How about the other places like LA, California, any other states?
Oh, yeah, there's,
Pretty much active?
oh, yeah, I think they're probably going strong, yeah.
Pretty strong?
South America is strong too, is that what I heard, that a pro came up from South American played?
Dominican Republic.
Was it that one?
Oh, yeah, the Dominican, we had a fellow come up from the Dominican and play with us through the summers, for a couple summers. But he said polo was big down there, but he'd rather go roping than
Oh,
play polo.
probably safer.
They start with bicycles, the kids, they got little short clubs,
Foot balance.
yeah, and they play with their bicycles down there.
That's
Getting
the
started.
coordinated.
Do you know what I saw last summer, I went to Sheridan and a friend said, you wanna watch a polo game? I said, absolutely. So, but what they had, one of these little girls, just maybe 4 or 5, she was on some sort of a motorized single wheel thing.
Oh, really?
And then she was hitting the ball off of that.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of remarkable because, not on the field, just kind of playing.
Right.
Because other kids tried to ride that motorized wheel and they couldn't even stand up. So but that's kind of like riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
It's the same idea.
Mhm.
A future polo player, I didn't know that was her goal. And lots of girls play polo, right? I
Oh, yeah.
swear Sue tried it. I swear Sue
Well,
played
yeah.
it.
I played once in the indoor, or not the indoor, but the one at Jim
Ross,
Ross.
yeah.
And I went up, hit the ball, and I was alongside the fence, and the mallet went into the fence, and I. All I can remember about polo really is walking the horses.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they used me for.
Yeah. But Judy, there were women that played on the Hart Ranch
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. Well, Kitty Pitts and Shirley Alexander was the one that talked Ray into, they talked Ray into trying to get, a bunch of people, get Kurt playing and stuff, and they're the ones that found Paul Littman, who was always the announcer and stuff, and stuff, so.
Yeah, so they kind of got that one at Hart Ranch
Yeah.
started, didn't they?
Yeah.
So there was a girl playing in Sheridan when I watched that game.
Well, I know there are polo players in here, and I'm looking at one right now, wondering if you have some memories you want to share with the group.
Me?
You,
Yes.
you can just sit there, you don't even have to just hold that up to your mouth.
Well, I kinda got started because my uncle Albert, he was one of the big players on there. And we were on the same ranch, so he got me started, and I was never really a real horseman, but I did enjoy playing polo. But one of the big things I remember is every Sunday, all summer, we get up, do chores and go to church, and afternoon, there was 3 of us there. We load up 6 horses in the truck, get them in, saddle them up. So that was an hour or so, and then we played till dark, had a supper. So it made a long day out of every Sunday. And I never played I went to Pier once, in a tournament with the Pier team. but I was never a great player. And then one time we went to Ellsworth, and that was my limit of being out. But one thing I remember in the spring, we'd been going, well, till I got married, but even afterwards, in the winter we didn't ride much. And that was in a stock saddle. And so you go out in the spring and get on one of these flat saddles, and you watch the cowboys in the open, you know, they all grab the saddle horn when the horse comes out of the chute to stay on there. Well, these things, and you reins in one hand and the mallet in the other, and the horse takes off as hard as they can go in one jump. You're squeezing pretty hard. The legs would just kill you in the spring until you got used to it. But it was good times back then. And my wife kind of got tired of being the one to have to spend all Sunday afternoon leading horses, so it's kind of cut into our polo time.
Talking about the cooling horses off in between chukkers, and that was probably my main thing, but I remember at the Roth Arena, the indoor arena, and I remember specifically 10 cents a head to cool them off between chukkers. Well, as about a 15, 16-year-old, you didn't get paid? You should have, well, you were cooling off the wrong horses. As a 15, 16-year-old kid, I could lead about 10 horses in cooling them off. I mean, it was a chore because these horses come off of there and they're hot and they're ready to go, and you hang on for dear life. But for 10 cents a head, I could take as many of them as I possibly could. But I got to fill in. That was my role in the thing. I never got to play in any of the games or anything. I wasn't probably old enough to do it, but I was pretty big for my age, and so you go out there and play one of the positions as best you could, and at least you had 3 or 4 guys on your team. So
How about Bud Ogden? He might have something to add here.
some reminiscing.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm one of the last. And I got a lot of memories. I can remember when the Pier Club used to come up and play with us, old Bud and Toby. Toby, he was a little bit of a stinker. But anyway, we went to Sheridan. I don't know if your dad ever told you much about that or not. But anyway, we went to Sheridan a couple of times. They had a good club up there. And surprisingly, they were supposed to be one of the Nationals' better teams. And when we got all done up there, our team come in second place, of course, to the professionals. They were professionals at that time, the Tyler team. And anyway, they went on to win the National that year. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Everybody had a favorite horse, I believe. I had one. I called her Betty. Betty Alibi was her registered name. She was a 7/8 thoroughbred. And every time you got off, when you got back on, she had to buck. And that's the honest to God's truth. I don't believe I ever got on her any time that she didn't buck a little bit. And if you did let her buck, she waited and caught you at the wrong time, my brother. She could lay you out like you never believed. But anyway, my memories of Polo, Clayton, Leroy, Raymond, Albert Keffler, Albert,
Jarvis.
yeah,
Albert Jarvis.
yeah.
Yep.
Manny, I can remember them all so well, and it was so much fun. So, I don't know if I can tell you a heck of a lot about it. I think Court done a tremendous job of explaining what goes on. But anyway, this has been fun. Really, I didn't realize it was going to happen or anything. I didn't write anything down. I did miss Sue being mentioned. She used to ride with me at times on the same team. And I remember she was so easy to coach. She was tremendous. Matter of fact is, she done a lot of things that really helped me out there, I can tell you that. And if you didn't play teamwork, you didn't get any place in polo, I can tell you that. My brother and I, Marlon, he's long gone now, but him and I used to get along quite well, especially with Raymond. If we had Raymond on our team, why, we pretty well took care of things, I'll tell you. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, this has been fun.
Good.
So, God bless.
Glad you came.
Take care.
That's
You
great.
bet.
Is there anyone else might have a memory of polo being played?
I got a frog in my throat, so I hope I can get through this. My family was more into machinery than they were horses. But I was in the Rapid City Library here a while back, and somebody put together a bunch of stories from Meade County and compiled them into a book. And there was a story in there about Ollie Hansen that he had told when he was in the nursing home in Rapids, when he was in the nursing home, I'm not sure where it was. But anyway, Ollie told the guy that he related the story to, and I should have copied it, but I didn't. But anyway, can you hear me right? So, anyway, Ollie and the Polo Club, the Alkali Polo Club, were playing Fort Meade, the cavalry. And they had the prize for the winner was a horse. And so Ollie, one of the officers in Fort Meade, was riding this horse in the match. And I was really being mean to the horse. He was beating the heck out of the horse, and Ollie was upset at him and hollered at him several times to quit. Well, the guy didn't quit. So Ollie said that he jerked the guy off the horse and started beating him with his stick. But the end of it was that Alkali lost. But then Ollie turned around and bought the horse for $25. And he said he just loved to take the horse out to the pasture and just sit there and watch him. So that's how he related the story to the guy in the nursing home.
That's great. That's a story.
Any other
I have some
memories?
a little bit. I grew up on Roth Ranch over the hill, and I believe they quit polo after Harlan was killed in the plane wreck. No, too much?
Who's after that?
Because I don't remember it too much. It must have been a couple of years later, because the polo field sat for years until they started team roping later, like in the early 70s. But I can remember, we talked about loading up the trucks, and then we would sit and watch the stock trucks go by. Not horse trailers like today, but the stock trucks with the horses in them, and they unload them on the loading chute. And of course, I was very little, and my sisters would hot walk the horses, one of my sisters would. And I have a helmet, and I have a vest that they wore with the number, I think, 1 on it. And I think that's all we have left that, from there. But I can remember the horses and everything. But yeah, there was a while there wasn't any horses out there except our horses, but, yeah, it was kind of fun to, when you were little, to go up and watch all the riders and stuff. Me and my mom were, but, you know, it started a lifelong interest in horses for our family, so anyway.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Howdy Holbrook, and I'm Kurt's cousin, the poor kid, he's stuck with me. I went to one, what do you call it, a match? Okay, I went to one match, he invited me to go to, it was down there right by the fairgrounds. I played basketball, football, and all that stuff, you know, and I watched 1 minute of that, and I thought, these guys are nuts. What is wrong with you? You know, and then I got to realizing how much effort. But anyway, you gotta bring the horse there, you gotta take care of your horses before you get there, you gotta bring them in, you get the string, and the play itself was controlled chaos at best. A hollering, horses moving, sweat, dust. And I thought, man, a basketball court's a lot more fun than that, that's all I gotta say. I really enjoyed it, and watching Kurt do it, you know, that's my entire understanding of polo is to watch one match. But it was a humdinger.
Anybody else? But you mentioned loading horses into the stock trailers, the trucks. I was quite fortunate, we just lived over the hill from the Roth Arena on Bearby Creek. And so we could just saddle up and ride over the hill and we were there. And so we didn't have to load them up or anything, but that meant that you better stay on your horse and make sure they're good to go to get you home, you know, so that was part of it. But that was interesting. I didn't even think about how everybody else was getting there, because I thought, well, you just ride over the hill.
Yeah, people didn't seem to have horse trailers then, they had horse stock trucks. That would have been those big size on the stock trucks.
Or you had back of a pickup, you put a stock rack on there, and put all in that.
You know, one thing I've kind of just thought of, I think, we talk about the horses back here, but I think those horses actually got where they enjoyed that. They would push and shove, and I think they really did enjoy it. They did.
Yeah. One time, a big horse was a real advantage, because you could push people out of the way.
I was wondering if you told anybody about the horse that died under your dad. Do you remember that? It was at, what you call it?
Scamp?
Yeah. The Polo Club, at that time, of course, we would gather a little money here and there. But anyway, Clayton, Thompson, I believe, and I don't know who else, went to the sale ring and bought 2 horses that they thought would fit rather well in the club. And those horses were for sale if anybody in the club wanted to buy them. Well, your father, Oakley, was riding that horse. He was trying him out. And that horse, he was headed for the goal, and I seen that horse go down just on his knees, and that horse died right there in the arena, and he had a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
So I wondered if you ever knew that. Yeah, I thought you was maybe around at that time, but anyway, God bless.
I missed that one. The horse had the heart attack, not Dad.
Yeah.
He had some of those too.
The only time I ever seen.
Any other
Yeah, he was right.
memories to share?
Gold.
Well, if not, Nancy, Kurt, thank you both so very, very much for being here.